My name's Bettina Matzkuhn. I've worked in textiles for over 40 years. I live in Vancouver and I work primarily with hand embroidery. I did a diploma in the 1970s in fine art, and then I got work with the National Film Board under an experimental budget, and I did 3 animated films using textiles. So that was in the early 1980s, and that was kind of a real apprenticeship in learning to exploit the materials. I really learned like different stitches, different ways of, rumpling them or rolling them, or just things that textiles alone could do. And then in the 90s, when I was 40, I went back to university and got a bachelor's in fine arts in order to be a better writer, because I realized that applying for things you need to be able to write concisely, and also to try and figure out as a craftsperson where I fit into the visual arts world, and I'm still working on that. I love nature. I grew up around boats, around weather, maps, all those kind of things. So I feel like maybe because I'm a socially awkward sort of person, that the landscape is something that lives with me as different characters. And when you're on a sailboat, things go by quite slowly, and as an adult I walk a lot. I've done a lot of bicycle touring, so things do go by a bit slowly, and I see the landscape in that way, and I like just the forms of it, but also the natural history of it, the flora, fauna, geology, weather. I do, and I feel very fond of the craft community. I worked in a craft store when I was in my late teens and just fell in love with all the different media and the people's ways of working, and I still feel that way. I have a modest collection of ceramics that I use every day, and I feel in the craft community there's no cliqueiness, that people are very open and generous with their knowledge, and I guess we're all like mad scientists tinkering away in our labs, and we like to talk shop when we get together. My parents were children in the Second World War. They were refugees from East Germany after the war, and I think they immigrated to Canada, and I think for a lot of children of immigrants there's a huge rupture in traditions, so I don't feel like my German heritage, I don't feel like there's a big carryover, and yet my grandmothers did needlework, my mother knitted, made rugs, made slippers, my father was a tradesman, so those kind of attention to detail, to quality, were really important. And also recycling or reusing materials. Just because something is reused doesn't mean it's shabby. There's a real respect for materials and not wasting things. Sure, I see different ways people use fiber, different ways of installing it or presenting it, different technologies that are incorporated into it. I guess I start with the idea and what lends itself to the image or the idea. So I don't start with the technology, but I certainly use technology in referring or doing research about things. So for this piece, the demise of the glaciers, that in a few decades we may be out of glaciers, and the shrinkage, the repercussions for those of us downstream. So the internet's really a big deal for me, for looking at maps, looking at information that I wouldn't be able to access before. Well, I work with silk and linen and cotton, which aren't indigenous materials. That may be more my European heritage. Linen just seems to be something that I really like. The geography is just something I've been steeped in, and I really feel that places have a really specific character in different weathers and different times of year. So the geography almost becomes a personality to me, and places aren't just snapshots for me. Like when I work on something, I'm working on with photos that I've taken, with drawings, and often there's sort of a combination. And also I'll mix things together to get at something. I don't think so. I can't really speak to that because I think there's so many backgrounds of, you know, people from different heritages in BC. Certainly the indigenous people have a recognizable style, and when I lived in Montreal, I don't think I've ever felt so homesick as when I saw a couch and sweater on somebody walking down the street. I just suddenly felt, but I think, you know, a lot of us are immigrants or children of immigrants, and, you know, we kind of mix things. I do anyway. Well, I'm excited by the variety of work and the quality of the work, and it's really wonderful to have all these things together. Thank you.